Yeah, let us begin. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for being part of our digital campaign,
I think you'll have
which
to
is
mute
titled.
everyone else. It's not possible.
Yeah, Srinivas, sir, I think there is. We need to mute you for a minute or two.
Hello.
Yeah, Srinivas, sir, can we just
Yeah.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
Can we just mute for 30 seconds?
Yeah. Thank you. Indian Youth
Thank you,
Congress have taken initiative to connect youth from abroad and expand the ideology. I would like to thank you, brother and sister from every corner of the world. Thank you being a part of the IYC event to look your voice on digital voting for NRI, and we will predict future for the interactive session. The great historian, international man, Shashi Tharoor ji. Sir.
Thank you very, very much. I must say it's a pleasure to join all of you this evening at this virtual gathering organized by the Indian Youth Congress on a theme that has personally been very close to my heart, voting rights for NRIs, because I used to be an NRI for a very long time. Let me thank my friends, Sri Krishna Alavaru, AICC in charge of the department, and Sri Srinivas BV, the president of the Indian Youth Congress, and the entire organizing team for inviting me to join you. Let me also take this opportunity to share my warm appreciation and inspiring warm appreciation and congratulations to all the members of the Youth Congress, led by President Srinivas, for their exemplary and inspiring humanitarian service, which you rendered during the devastating second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, at a time when many of our formal institutions of governance had left our citizens to fend for themselves. Your collective actions offered a rare glimpse of hope and light amid the darkness that had engulfed our country. I join many in our grateful country in saluting you for the manner in which you rallied together in one of our darkest hours, and for the life-saving services offered by all of you to the countless citizens who were struggling at the time from the widespread impact of the virus. So well done, Srinivas. Well done, Youth Congress. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, the issue of offering voting rights for NRIs is one that is personally important for me, especially as someone who was an NRI for a significant part of my lifetime. And I had actually raised the issue at the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in Mumbai in 2004 or 5, pointing out that it was unfortunate that India was the only major democracy that disenfranchised its own citizens by denying Indian passport holders who happened to be living abroad the right to vote. In my own case, I left India as a student at the age of 19, at a time when the voting age was 21, and I never had a chance to vote at all in any Indian election until my return to India for good at the end of my UN career, 3.5 decades later. And then I got to vote for myself, so I suppose there was at least that consolation. Now, my suggestion of NRI voting rights didn't fall on deaf ears, but when I eventually returned home, fought elections, and joined the government, the UPA's eventual decision on the issue of NRI voting admittedly fell somewhat short of my hopes, though it offered a welcome first step. In 2010, the government allowed the NRIs voting rights, but the rules required them to be present in their constituency on the day of voting and to cast their ballots in the constituency relating to the permanent address recorded on their Indian passport. But in many cases, that permanent address is long out of date and they have no real connection there anymore. Sometimes you apply for a passport, for example, from a place you're renting, and you now have to go and vote there, even though you have no connection anymore there. So not surprisingly, only a fraction of our NRIs have opted to cast their vote using this method. After all, it would be impractical for many of our NRIs, such as migrants in the Middle East, the majority of whom are employed in blue-collar jobs, to bear the significant cost of returning to India just to vote. To illustrate the scale of the challenge, we have the largest diaspora population comprising at least 31 million individuals. But in the 2019 elections, only an estimated 25,000 individuals returned to India to vote, a fraction of our huge NRI demographic. And not surprisingly, the proposal was challenged in the courts by NRI petitioners on the ground that it was based on inherent inequality and would selectively disadvantage certain groups of NRIs. Taking cognizance of the matter, the Honorable Supreme Court in November 2014 sought the views of the government with regard to allowing NRIs to cast their votes in Indian elections through proxy voting, postal voting, as security personnel serving away from home are allowed to do, and e-ballots. In e-ballot voting, a blank postal ballot paper is emailed to the voter, who then has to fill it in and mail it by regular post to their constituency, where it will be counted along with other postal ballots on the day of the electoral results. Now, we've not made significant progress in exploring and implementing these options, though attempts were made when the present government introduced and passed an amendment to the Representation of the People Act in the Lok Sabha in 2018. But in typical fashion that we've now become accustomed to from this BJP government, the Speaker extended the sitting of the House by an hour, and the government surreptitiously deferred a bill listed before this amendment in order to ensure a hasty passage without any serious opposition, but then they forgot to bring it to the Rajya Sabha, and it lapsed with the dissolution of the 16th Lok Sabha. Now, as one of the many MPs who spoke against that amendment, I pointed out at that time in Parliament that the bill, which would grant NRIs the right to vote through proxy, raised a number of serious questions about the manner in which we were at the time seeking to implement the right to adult franchise. After all, when India attained independence, our leaders took a conscious decision to adopt universal adult franchise, whereby every Indian, irrespective of their caste, creed, race, language, sex, origin, could exercise his or her right to vote, provided they were citizens of India. Nehruji stood by this fundamental principle of democracy, despite the opposition he faced at that time. There were many who argued at that time that giving a small, poor, developing country with a vast population of illiterate people the right to universal adult franchise would lead to disaster. It won't surprise you to note that the RSS was a big critic of the idea of everyone getting a vote. The RSS journal, The Organizer, in 1952, stated that Nehru would live to regret the failure of universal adult franchise in India, unquote. But our experience since 1952, in the last 69 years, since the first general elections, has clearly shown that the RSS fear was misplaced and that Nehruji's faith in the Indian voter stands vindicated. Why then were we against the proposed amendment, which at least on paper took us further to Nehruji's vision of truly universal adult franchise? Let me quickly summarize the concerns that I had at that time. It's true that the right to vote is a statutory right, but the decision to vote for a candidate is part of the voter's right to free expression under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, and is essential to the functioning of democracy, and therefore an important aspect of this right is the secrecy involved. In the landmark Kuldeep Nair versus Union of India case, the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court held that secrecy is sine qua non for elections to the House of Representatives of the People, unlike elections to the Rajya Sabha, which is not a constituency-based election. Proxy vote, in essence, goes against the very concept of a secret ballot, because you have to disclose your preference to another individual who in turn has to vote on your behalf. These concerns, by the way, were shared by former Chief Election Commissioners S.Y. Qureshi and N. Gopalaswamy as well. Free and fair elections are an essential aspect of the basic structure of the Constitution, and there are various court judgments reiterating this. But in the case of proxy voting, there is no guarantee that a proxy may vote as he's been told to do. Thereby, that too would vitiate the object of free and fair elections. If I tell you, listen, I can't come to India, but please vote for Congress, and you go off and vote for some other party, how will I even know? Your vote is secret, but my vote, first of all, the secrecy is gone. Secondly, the security of the ballot is gone. So the object of free and fair elections is vitiated, and proxy voting is susceptible to misuse and electoral fraud. In fact, in parts of the UK, elections have seen allegations of what's called granny farming, where senior citizens are allowed to give proxies, and the authorization to proxies was obtained without them even realizing it. And it became an example of electoral fraud in the UK. I'm sure that what they can do in the UK, we are quite capable, more than capable of doing the same kind of fraud in India. And the misuse of proxy votes is already now established in the mother of parliaments there. One will only delegate the right to vote to a proxy if that proxy in that particular constituency has the trust and confidence of the voter. But what if the voter does not have a relationship of this nature with an individual in the constituency? Now, this situation can be remedied through e-postal ballots. In fact, in 2016, the government had amended the conduct of elections rules to enable service voters, including armed forces personnel, to cast their vote in elections through e-postal ballots. But the report of the Election Commission on this matter had clearly stated that apart from proxy voting, an additional alternative of e-postal ballots must be provided so that the overseas voter can exercise his or her franchise in the manner that she prefers. Now, the recommendation of the report of the Election Commission to undertake a pilot study by using the option suggested by it in a few constituencies and in some assembly elections before adopting it for Parliament has been ignored by the government. And the failure to undertake such a study is an indicator of reckless policy making. The government has actually effectively succumbed to myopic political benefits in a bid to garner NRI votes ahead of the 2019 elections by hastily rushing this poorly drafted bill that remain vulnerable to the risks of the many challenges I've outlined. And so they're quietly allowing it to lapse with the dissolution of the House is not surprising, and they've made no effort thereafter to revive this contentious law. Now, some have suggested that as an alternative, our embassies and consulates overseas could be repurposed into polling stations where NRIs can securely cast their votes physically. This is a practice that has been adopted by many foreign countries. In fact, during the American presidential elections, every American embassy and consulate becomes a polling station. You often find long lines of Americans waiting outside. But the problem with a country like ours is that the size, the number of people involved remains an insurmountable challenge. The option of NRIs voting at embassies abroad is effectively ruled out for Indians because the number of Indian citizens eligible to vote abroad is so large that it would cause public order problems for some foreign countries. We have, for instance, 25.9 lakh Indians residing in Saudi Arabia as of 2018. That's more than 2.5 million. And two consulates that struggle to handle the considerable volume of consular, visa, and welfare-related requests they receive daily. How can we possibly expect these two consulates and our very thin diplomatic corps there to handle the processing of 2.5 million ballots in an election? This is what has brought us to the question of electronic voting. Why not send a secure voter ID to the NRI voter with due authentication safeguards and let her or him vote safely, rapidly, and securely electronically by email or on a website? The pandemic, along with the corresponding shift towards digital platforms in each and every sphere of our lives, has offered a fresh impetus for us to reevaluate the benefits of such a measure. But we have to acknowledge that there are fundamental challenges that must first be addressed. For instance, one major hurdle is the preparation of a valid electoral roll and the elimination of absentee, shifted, and duplicate voters, referred to as ASD voters, from these rolls to prevent election fraud. The government must answer as to how it plans to manage this issue in relation to overseas voters, especially since we do not have enough staff in our missions abroad to deal with this phenomenon. The proposal to link the Aadhaar database to voter ID database in an attempt to address this issue, as the government has attempted to do so during the recent Election Laws Amendment Bill, is, in my view, a flawed and misguided approach. During the introduction of this bill yesterday, I pointed out a number of serious concerns that we in the opposition share with regard to the proposal. It violates the landmark Puttaswamy judgment, which limited Aadhaar to welfare schemes. It also violates Article 14 by arbitrarily discriminating in favor of Aadhaar over other identity documents. And it could potentially convert Aadhaar into a basis for verification of voting, despite the fact that it's a document that serves as proof of residence and not of citizenship. So anybody living in India can get an Aadhaar, but only citizens can vote. So if you are living in India and you're not a citizen, you go with your Aadhaar and you get a vote, that would be actually unconstitutional. Now, the challenges that I've mentioned should not dissuade us from strongly considering the option of extending digital voting rights for NRIs. This is obviously has a strong benefit of being the most efficient and hassle-free option to allow NRIs to exercise their vote. A number of countries have shown credible and encouraging results when it comes to digital voting. The best known example is, of course, that of Estonia, which remains the only country that allows its citizens to cast their vote for any election, whether for the national parliament or even the local sort of village governing council, via remote electronic vote. Since its inception in 2005, online voting has grown to become the norm in the country, with over 240,000 Estonians voting in the 2019 Riigikogu federal elections via the online medium. 47% of the votes cast by Estonians for the elections for the European Parliament came from online voters. It's also worth pointing out the benefits of online voting in getting young first-time voters to vote, which is why the Indian Youth Congress is the appropriate platform for this conversation. For instance, in a recent survey, nearly 16% of first-time voters in the country said they probably would not have voted had internet voting been unavailable. Switzerland is another country where the popularity of digital voting has risen steadily ever since some cantons, there each canton can make its own voting rules, allowed for this measure in 2009. Now e-voting counts for an average of 20% of the votes in Switzerland. Now, of course, skeptics will point to the obvious challenges. In terms of demographics, one can hardly compare an Estonia or a Switzerland to the size of our NRI population, let alone the whole Indian population. But my answer is that sending a few million emails with a voter ID is actually not much more difficult than sending a few lakh IDs as the Estonians or the Swiss do, because the fact is that you can send bulk emails. It's not a problem. Then comes the objection of trust in e-voting. Key challenge in an era where there are so many cybersecurity threats looming large and people worried about serious risks that can potentially derail the smooth implementation of digital voting, whether hacking, for example, of votes could happen. Netherlands, for instance, abandoned any form of e-voting, digital voting altogether in 2006, because cybersecurity experts said at that time that it could be easily hacked or manipulated. In 2017, the Dutch actually had a scare when fears were raised about possible Russian interference in Dutch elections. And so they insisted it had to be paper ballots that could be seen and verified and counted. But if countries like France and even Pakistan can look beyond these challenges and do offer digital voting options for their respective diaspora communities, surely we in India, a land that has been the cradle of world-beating creations in the field of information technology, can and should be ambitious enough to develop the necessary infrastructure that will allow our NRIs to realize their dreams of electoral participation. Now, my time has run out. There's a lot more I could say about the NRIs, having been one, and their desire to participate in electoral outcomes at home, but I'd rather wait to hear your comments and questions and respond afterwards. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Tharoor. That was a lot of very interesting points in a 10 minutes quick summary. Now we have people watching us live and we have people in the room from different countries, and I want to bring some questions to you. If it's okay, can we maybe get questions in a bundle of 2 to 3 so that you can respond to them? Is that okay in the interest of time? So the first question is that Dr. Tharoor, you did allude to this. So last year in 2020, November 27, when the Election Commission wrote to the Law Ministry saying we're ready administratively, technologically to launch this, they made an exception. They said probably in the pilot phase, we want to exclude the Gulf countries. Now you kind of refer to the reasons why, because the numbers are too large. But if they did go ahead in the pilot project excluding the Gulf countries, do you think that would be constitutional, or that would attract the charge of kind of a discriminatory treatment amongst equals? That's one question. But I have others with me. I want to quickly introduce them.
One at a time, because to be honest, I would lose track otherwise, and there are too many things coming in. So on the question of a pilot project in selected countries, there's one point I should have mentioned in my main remarks as well, which is that there is another constituency that could benefit from digital voting, and that's domestic Indian migrant labor. See, one of the comments that our friends on the left have made is, why would you give the vote to Indian citizens who happen to be abroad when you don't give the vote to some poor Bihari laborer working in Kerala, for instance, because he can't get back to Bihar to vote? So the idea, one advantage of electronic voting or internet voting would be that that Bihari laborer in Kerala can still vote in his constituency back in Bihar through a digital voter ID. So first of all, I do want to address the question of discrimination against migrant labor. It can be solved in exactly the way we solve it against NRI voters. Now, on the question of a pilot project abroad, I would say as long as it is announced as a pilot, you could take one country, a probably smallish country in the Gulf, where we have a large number of Indian citizens, plus extend it to one state where we have a large number of internal migrant laborers. So there's no discrimination between internal migrants and external migrants. And announce it's only a pilot, and then no one can say it's discrimination, because we say we have no intention of excluding anybody. We just want to see how it works and what the problems are. And if it succeeds, then we extend it to everybody abroad and at home. That could be a better solution.
Noted, Dr. Tharoor. We have with us Freddie Josh from Qatar. Freddie, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Sir, considering the demographics of the NRI population and their hometowns, it could be noted that the major concentration of this is in certain specific areas. My question is that such a concentration will result in a situation whereas the NRI voting would make an impact only in certain constituencies, whereas the voice of the NRI population is to be considered on national basis. How could this be addressed? Also, I have one concern. This is government works on the polarization to retain power. If we enact digital voting rights to the NRIs, I strongly fear that the regime would resort to the polarization tactics among the NRI population, which is now a unified community upholding the spirit of being an Indian. How could Congress face this? These are the two questions.
Let me first address your question of only some constituencies benefiting. That's, I'm afraid, built into the logic of the parliamentary system, in that the parliamentary system is a constituency-based democracy. And that's why even when the UPA government passed that earlier act, it confined people's right to vote to a specific parliamentary constituency. Now, if, as you say, and I think you are reflecting particularly your appreciation of the condition of NRIs in the Gulf countries, where we have an overwhelming majority, I think, are from Kerala, and they would therefore have a decisive impact on elections in Kerala, whereas let's say there are fewer from Madhya Pradesh or Bengal or even Maharashtra, and therefore those states will be relatively unaffected by a significant NRI vote. The short answer is that's our system, and I don't think we can do anything about it, but at least it does mean that, let's say, an NRI from Pathanamthitta who is working very hard and sending money home to his family, and they're paying taxes on that money and all of that, for them, the fact that that NRI has a say in some of the decisions being made in Pathanamthitta, that seems to me to be the way in which our system is supposed to work. And so you shouldn't feel that that's somehow unfair. I think that's the way the parliamentary system is designed to work. On your concerns about polarization, I'm less alarmed, because I think from what I've seen abroad, yes, you have certainly some extremist elements. That happens, and that has happened, by the way, with NRIs, even before there was any talk of digital voting. We've had, sadly, Khalistani terrorism being financed from Canada and Western America. We've had Sri Lankan Tamils financing the LTT in Sri Lanka. We've had the Irish Americans paying for the Irish Republican Army. Extremism has been a feature of expatriation at many points in recent history. But for the most part, the majority of NRIs tend to actually be far more accommodative, far more inclusive in their approach, precisely because they live in countries where they have to live with each other and live with people with multiple backgrounds. I was writing a story on watching India and Pakistan play cricket in Dubai, and I made the remark that Dubai may well be the best city of undivided India, because you are seeing pre-partition bonhomie between people who are Indians and Pakistanis in a place like Dubai, living together, working together, socializing together, sharing experiences together, without any bitterness or acrimony. It was startling to see how good the spirit was between these victorious, triumphant Pakistani supporters and the dejected Indian supporters. There was never any unpleasant incident. So NRIs, by and large, tend to be far more accommodative of each other because they live and work with each other in foreign countries. So I'm a little less concerned. There will be some extremists. No one is ever 100% good or tolerant or inclusive, but I would say the majority will be that way, and you needn't worry so much. I hope I'm proven right anyway when the time comes.
Thank you. Next, we have Akhil Das. So he's from United Arab Emirates, and he has a question. Akhil, go right ahead, please.
Thank you very much for Indian Youth Congress for giving me an opportunity to ask a question or raise a question or raise a voice for our NRIs. My question is, now the Indian Youth Congress started a campaign for voting for the NRIs. So as an opposition party, what Indian National Congress can do in this subject, in this topic? And also we saw that in the NRC CA issue came, most of the state government themselves came to this point, and they the state government themselves will take an action against the central government to against this NRC and CAA bills. So in this NRI voting, why the state governments are not taking any actions? If the state governments took their raise their voice, it will be a positive response we'll get a positive response. So here, my question is to what the Indian National Congress as a major opposition party, how we can involve in this case, and how the state government can involve in the NRI voting for the NRI voting.
Okay, well, the state governments are limited by the fact that it's not a state law, it's only a central law. All voting laws in India, like all citizenship laws, are centrally done. This is on the central list only. So whatever practices are to be followed electorally have to be approved by the central government, and they have to be uniform across the country. We are not one of those countries where NRIs can vote in Kerala but not vote in Punjab, that kind of thing. It has to be uniform. So states can raise an issue in a body like the Interstate Council, but they cannot take any decisions on the matter. That can only be taken by the central government. As to the question of what the Congress can do in opposition, we can certainly raise it. When I was chairman of the External Affairs Committee, I not only raised the issue, I got the ministries of External Affairs, the Law Ministry, and the Home Ministry to come and testify before my committee on the pros and cons of NRI voting. And some of the arguments I gave you actually reflects what I heard and what we discussed in the External Affairs Committee. So even though I'm in the opposition, unfortunately, I'm no longer chairing that committee, so I can't do it. But it's a kind of issue which an opposition member of that committee today can easily persuade the committee to take up for discussion. So I would say that there are ways in which you can use the parliamentary forum to do this. And yes, you're right. An opposition state government, whether it's a communist government in Kerala or a Congress government in Jharkhand or whatever, in Chhattisgarh, we can certainly also have these parties raise their voice. If the Youth Congress discussion today leads to the party adopting this as a specific plank of the party, then why shouldn't state governments affiliated to us take it forward? I think it'll be well worth considering.
Okay, we have less time and many hands raised, so I'll request you to keep your questions short, please. Mr. Narala Nihar and then Mr. Shashi Tharoor. Please go ahead with your questions, Mr. Narala.
Thank you so much for the great opportunity to be here. And the idea is great for NRI voting. NRIs are very important in casting their vote, as many youngsters of the country are in abroad for their studies, jobs, and in search of opportunities. And my question is, how far is digital voting safe, and how can we protect it from hacking? As Pegasus attacks have done just like that, why can't it be done on the website of voting? Why can't it get hacked by ruling government so that they can get misused by getting the voting percentage through NRIs? Why? Because there are a large number of students out there in abroad.
It's a very good question, Narala, but the answer is that, the same people who are raising these doubts are also doing electronic banking. They're also moving their money on the web. They're also doing things like doing online purchases. E-commerce has been growing every year. So technically, if something could be hacked, anything could be hacked. And it's possibly true that a voting mechanism could also be unsafe. But that's why it becomes incredibly important to develop the highest levels possible of cybersecurity. Those will constantly need to be refreshed and updated because you have to constantly stay one step ahead of the hackers. But it can be done. And one of the ways it can be done is through foolproof number mechanisms, a secure ID sent to a secure email address from which a reply itself has to carry another secure proof of identity, various things like this. Double and triple step verifications can be done because a vote is such a major thing. Ultimately, a determined criminal hacker might still be able to do damage. But remember that in India, we are still talking about over 700 million voters. So even if, say, 10 or 15 million NRIs voted, they're never close to being anything like a majority of the electorate. So even if some of those votes were hacked, I'm reasonably hopeful that the hackers will not be able to completely overturn a government or create a new government. That'll only be, it'll have at best a marginal effect. Just as some of the cyber crime we hear about has not destroyed the economy, has not destroyed e-commerce, but has had a marginal effect.
Ashik Tharoor and then Aman from Ballot Now, please. Ashik.
Hi, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I just shortened the question for asking to Mr. Shashi Tharoor ji. My question is that since our party was involved, we were framing the laws and putting to role of NRI voting. But still, as a legal system, we are facing a lot of challenges. And also in the parliamentary committee, as you mentioned, we are raising. But the farmer issue, we are able to come forward, make successful. But as a backbone NRI, it's an economical backbone of India. NRI's issues also should come to the mainstream of all India. So then only like farmers issue, we will be succeeded and we are able to give our NRI votes, especially for countries. Thank you, sir.
Yep, no particular comments to offer there. I think your points are well noted, and the fact is that that we can't always have the kind of success we've had with the farmers issue. In fact, some would tell you that it was a farmer's success and not the party's success, and that may be entirely fair as a comment, because in fact this government is very reluctant to give in to the opposition parties, but the farmers were too broad a constituency to ignore. But we can keep hammering away. I mean, just saying that the government may not listen to us is never a good enough answer. We have to keep fighting, keep raising our voice, keep pushing the agenda, and we should do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aman now. Aman, quickly your question, please.
Hello, sir. Thank you for your session. So it was really enlightful. My name is Aman Rishu. I'm an entrepreneur by profession. I have been building next generation voting system for last 3 years. We call it Ballot Now. We call it Ballot Now IVS, Ballot Now Internet Voting System. We started working on this as a project to overcome the challenges for temporary migrants. As you said, as you mentioned that some of the Biharis local who have not been working, they do not get the chance to vote. So I am one of them actually. I came Delhi for the better education. In that I lost my right to vote somehow. It was a challenge for me. So I have had a pleasure to discuss this whole idea. It was in a raw stage with Krishna sir in 2019 in IYC office. So I had a pleasure to discuss with him. He gave us a few insights about it. And right now we are very much ready with our voting system. We are about to launch. We are willing to launch. We are looking for some kind of project to test our voting system. And about the hacking part, which other person which mentioned, we have covered all the aspect of the voting system which can be taken by a hacker. We have been using very high level securities. So we can guarantee that 99% it is secure, 1% nothing is secure. We have been trusting on technology to take us to on moon. So we can trust the technology to cast our vote. We really want to get some kind of help with the government or with any parties, political parties who are allowed, who are eligible to work with us on this project.
Thank you, Aman. Well, I am excited to hear you develop this, but in my world, unfortunately, the policy has to come before the technology. In other words, until we know what the government is prepared to permit by law, how will you conduct an experiment with your system? And you could do it in a place which is not part of the constitutional machinery, say conducting a college election right now, or many of the campuses are closed, students are home. You might go to a couple of colleges and say, listen, how about conducting your students' union elections online to test my system? And that's maybe 10,000 students, whatever the number is, who are able to vote from home. And then publicize that event, publicize the vote, publicize the way it worked, publicize, and you can even issue a challenge to hackers saying, try and hack this if you like. And then you have an online election. I mean, I was a student union president myself in my college. So I know that these elections really are exciting and matter to students. Maybe that's one way that you can actually get your idea up there, is to have as a pilot project a student union election in a college campus with the consent of that college or that president. That might be something you could do. But I'm afraid at the serious national representative level, until the law permits it, you can't just go and conduct an experiment with using real electoral rolls. That's why I think a student election would be a good way of experimenting. You're in Delhi, go and see the president of JNU, or go and see the president of Delhi University, I mean the chancellor, vice chancellor of Delhi University, and say, hey, how about your student union elections through ballot now? Might work.
Sir,
Thank you,
with
sir.
your permission, can you last question, sir? Last two questions.
I'm actually out of time because 7:45, I have another meeting. But all right, in 4 minutes, let's see if we can do it, and then I'll run.
So then we'll just take one question, and then I'll invite Krishna sir to share his comments. Jisha, you are here. Can you quickly ask your question in the interest of time? Very quickly, please. Jisha George. Jisha, can you hear us?
Thank you, Indian Youth Congress and Dr. Shashi Tharoor ji for this great opportunity. Directly, I'm coming to my question. As an NRI and especially as a health worker, I noted that almost all the embassies have an idea about their citizens. Unfortunately for Indian embassy, I think almost all the Indian embassy has no idea upon their citizens. There is no data, nothing on there is no data or nothing regarding the citizens of India to Indian embassy. On the other hand, for example, Philippines, Nepal, and Britain, they are having their own shelters itself to preserve their citizens. And even if any disease, they are well concerned on it. On behalf of the idea of NRI voting, how is it possible to get a precise data upon the population as Indian embassy is facing this situation, and thus to arrange a transparent voting for all the NRIs, which will help the safety of the citizens too. Because if the migrant country is concerned that the migrants have their...
Yeah, I think your question is well taken. How do we maintain? I think your question is well taken in the interest of time. How do we take an account of the numbers and the register of NRIs in India? Sir, would you want to respond to it?
Yeah, I think actually this is
without any database, how can we move forward it?
This is a very crying need, Jisha. I'm glad you've raised it, and thank you. And thank you for your service as a health worker. These are challenging times for your profession. I have actually, in the External Affairs Committee, raised the question of whether our embassies have an accurate database of the passport holders, at least, if not all the PIOs, but at least the passport holding Indians in a particular area. And I'm sorry to say they don't maintain that, partially because, of course, it's a lot of work. There are large numbers of people. And partially their answer is that what is the mechanism by which they can have that information? In other words, there is no legal obligation for an Indian arriving in, let's say, Kuwait to report that they have arrived to the Indian embassy in Kuwait. So where does the Indian embassy in Kuwait find out that this Indian has arrived and is living there? They have no means of doing so. If at all we create a database, it would be bound to be incomplete because some people will not give the necessary information. That is a genuine challenge. So we could conduct drives from the embassy saying, would you like to sign up for benefits as a citizen of India? So we know where you are, your address, your phone number, and any benefits extended to you, we can communicate to you. But it's a lot of work, and the embassy and the MEA have never shown a great deal of keenness or enthusiasm to do it. There is a genuine issue of the scale of the policy, of the scale of the numbers. In many Gulf countries, we have over 1 million. That's over 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 30 lakhs in some countries. And that's a vast, vast number of people that the embassies are afraid to cope with. As I mentioned, even when it comes to absentee voting, the idea that people can come and use the embassy as a polling station created horrified reactions from the MEA saying, don't do this. Our embassies will collapse. We will become unwelcome in these countries if every few years we have literally lakhs of people lining up to vote. This is one of the reasons why the argument for digital voting is a compelling one. But yes, your suggestion that we should get the embassies to do more, that's well taken, and we'll convey it.
Thank you, sir. As a last word, may I quickly request Krishna Alavaru, sir, our National in Charge of Indian Youth Congress, to deliver the vote of thanks. Krishna, sir.
Thank you, Avani. Dr. Tharoor, thank you so much for joining us. I think the Indian Youth Congress is trying to do what it can to raise policy issues that are pertinent to Indians residing outside India. And digital voting rights happens to be an important one. So I'd really like to thank you for participating, the participants as well, and the team, Mitendra, Avni, Samarth, Rishika. Thank you so much. And I think Dr. Tharoor summed it up well. I think this is an issue where the policy comes before the technology, and we should try and push the policy through and see what we can do to move in that direction. So thank you, everyone. Good day.
Thank you, Krishna, and thank you all, Avani and your colleagues, for a wonderful session. All the best for those who joined us, either directly on Zoom or online. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. And for everybody who has joined us, just stay with us for a minute. I want to quickly invite us Mitendra Bhaiya. He is being the principal coordinator for this event. Mitendra Bhaiya, would you want to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you to every participant. Thank you for helping us out in these last 20 days. You have worked very hard, and thank you that we are forming a new team and we'll work together as a IYC team, and let's see what wonders we can do at an international level for the upcoming youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We also have with us our co-team member, Rishika. Rishika, are you here? And do you want to quickly share your 2 cents, Rishika? Rishika, are you able to unmute yourself? We also have with us Samarth Bhaiya. Samarth Bhaiya, are you here? And can you quickly unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thanks, Avani. Thank you, everyone, all the participants today. It is always an encouraging moment to be amongst people that think alike. So now, as we grow this initiative, we will need over the next few days more people to be active participants so that we can help building this group over the next few days and longer. So I will share a link in the chat for our WhatsApp group on which we can interact and share our ideas and see what we can do together to create an environment which is more participative and is more engaging to an audience which is there in your network and we need to explore. Also, we will share some Google Forms or a web link where you can fill in details if you are available to volunteer in any aspect, whether it be reach out, engagement, social media, events, IT, or any other skill of your choice. So we'll be sharing a form which you can fill, and then we'll get back to you with what exactly and how exactly can you help us gain that momentum. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again. Thanks, Avani.
Thank you, Samarth Bhaiya. Once again,